The wind clawed through the canyon as the rope burned against his neck. Malric Devereux, a man once feared across the frontier, stood on the gallows with wrists bound, dust crusted on his bloodied shirt. Below him, the townsfolk of Centrevale whispered his name like a curse, spitting in the dirt as if their hatred could bury him quicker than the hangman's knot. His eyes did not water, though the sun was fierce and the noose cut into his skin. What broke him was not the rope, but the sight of a boy in the crowd, no older than 12, gripping his mother's hand and glaring up at him with a hatred so pure it could carve stone. Malric whispered a name under his breath, Elone, and closed his eyes as the lever creaked beneath his boots. But death did not come. Instead, the sound of hooves thundered against the ground, shaking the wooden platform. A column of horsemen dressed in black dusters swarmed the square, rifles raised, dust choking the air. The hangman staggered back, shouting as one rider leapt from his horse, a gleaming badge pinned to his chest. Sheriff Vautrin's voice was cold as iron when he barked, "The prisoner is not for you." With a single cut of his blade, the rope snapped and Malric tumbled to the dirt, coughing, choking but alive. The townsfolk screamed betrayal, throwing rocks, cursing the law that had spared the devil among them. 2 deputies dragged Malric upright, shackles clanging. The boy in the crowd screamed, "Hang him! He killed my father." But Vautrin did not look back. He ordered his men to bind the outlaw tighter, then motioned toward the horizon. High above the mesas, a jagged fortress pierced the clouds like a spear, the world's highest prison, known only in hushed whispers as Les Roches Noirs. Few had seen it with their own eyes, fewer still had returned. Its walls, black as volcanic glass, were said to hold every unrepentant evil the earth could not bury. And now, Malric Devereux would be taken there, to rot among monsters greater than himself. The townsfolk hurled stones until the riders vanished into the canyon. Malric, still breathless, wondered if this fate was punishment or salvation. He had expected the noose, quick, merciful, final. Instead, he was bound for a place where legend said the wicked were broken, body and soul. He looked once more over his shoulder and caught the boy's gaze, seared with grief. For a heartbeat, Malric wanted to shout the truth that he was not the monster they believed. But the words died in his throat. Silence was heavier than iron, and it followed him as the riders pressed deeper into the dust. Night fell by the time they reached the narrow trail curling up the cliffs. Torches glowed, casting shadows that crawled like spiders across the stone. The fortress loomed higher, jagged teeth biting at the sky. Malric's heart pounded, not from fear of the prison itself, but from the ghosts he carried within. The higher they climbed, the colder the wind became, until even the stars seemed distant and cruel. Shackled, bruised, hated by the world below, he whispered again into the night, "Alone." It was not a curse, not a plea but a wound too deep to ever heal. The trail to Les Roches Noirs wound like a serpent through the cliffs, each turn revealing new scars carved into the land. Malric's body rocked with every step of the mule cart, wrists chained to the iron bar beside him. His eyes, though swollen, searched the horizon as if hoping to see the town one last time. But the canyon had swallowed Centrevale whole, leaving only memories. In the silence, his mind dragged him backward, to a night when smoke blotted out the stars. Years ago, flames devoured Centrevale's grain barns. The fire roared like a beast, painting the sky in red. Malric, younger then, sprinted through the chaos, his boots striking sparks against the cobblestones. He wasn't there to save, he was there to take. The outlaw gang he rode with, the Crow Blades, had planned it. Ignite the barns, strike fear, then steal the vault's gold while townsfolk fought the blaze. Malric's hands shook as he pulled a sack of coins from the sheriff's office, the cries of children and mothers clawing at his ears. He wanted to stop, but their leader, the brutal Armand Lestrel, shoved a revolver into his ribs. "Hesitate and you'll burn with them." That night was the birth of his curse. Among the ashes, a man lay dead. Mathis, the blacksmith, struck down when he tried to defend his shop. Malric had not fired the shot, but he had stood there, paralyzed as Armand's bullet tore through the man's chest. Worse, Mathis's son had been watching, frozen in the doorway. The boy's scream still echoed inside Malric's skull. That boy was the same one he had seen at the gallows, grown older, eyes sharper, but the wound unchanged. Malric had told himself for years that he wasn't the worst of them, that his hands were stained but not drowned. Yet when he remembered the boy's eyes, guilt suffocated him more than any rope could. He could have walked away that night, but he didn't. He could have spoken the truth when they called him a murderer, but silence had been easier. Every mile closer to Les Roches Noirs was a mile deeper into that silence, and he began to wonder if perhaps the prison was not a punishment for men, but a judgment from God. As the cart creaked higher up the cliffside, Sheriff Valtrin rode alongside, eyes unreadable beneath his brim. "You'll see things up there," Valtrin muttered, his voice like gravel. "Things worse than your sins." Malric looked up at the fortress looming above them and thought of the boy again. If the prison swallowed him whole, would that boy sleep easier? Or would his hatred burn hotter, never satisfied? The gates of Les Roches Noirs yawned open with a shriek, metal grinding against stone. Malric squinted against the torchlight spilling out from within, revealing a courtyard ringed by towers. Chains clanged, voices wailed, and the stench of rust and sweat hung in the air. It was not merely a prison, it was a tomb for the living. As deputies dragged Malric from the cart, he staggered forward, his boots crunching on gravel that looked darker than night itself. Sheriff Valtrin dismounted and strode ahead, his steps confident, almost too calm for a place cursed with such weight. Malric studied him, searching for cracks in his armor. Valtrin had saved him from the noose, but not for mercy. Something else glimmered in his eyes. In the center of the courtyard, a warden awaited, cloaked in gray with a face carved like stone. "Another one for the tower?" the warden rasped. Valtrin nodded. "This one's name carries too much hate in the valley. Best he disappears where no sound escapes." Malric flinched at the words, not because they stung, but because Valtrin spoke to them with no venom, as if delivering a fact about the weather. Inside, Les Roches Noirs was worse. Iron doors slammed like thunder, echoing through endless corridors. Prisoners moaned from their cells, some whispering in languages Malric did not know. The walls themselves seemed alive, dripping with condensation, though no rain had touched these cliffs in years. Deputies shoved him into a narrow cell, its stone walls close enough to choke. The door clanged shut, sealing him in a silence so thick it hummed. Malric pressed his forehead to the iron bars, fighting the rising storm inside his chest. Hours passed, though time here was a blur. In the cell opposite his, a figure stirred. A woman's voice, cracked but steady, whispered, "You're new. I can smell the dust of the valley on you." Malric raised his head. Across from him sat a prisoner, her dark hair tangled, her eyes sharp despite the gloom. "Name's Seraphine," she said. "What's yours?" Malric hesitated, then muttered, "Devereux." Her lips curled into something between a sneer and a smile. "So you're the one." He froze. "The one what?" Seraphine leaned closer to the bars, her voice dropping. "The one the sheriff didn't kill." Her words dug into him like spurs. Why had Valtrin spared him? Was it truly justice to bury him here instead of the noose? Or did the sheriff have a darker purpose? Malric lay back against the wall, his heart thundering louder than the echoes. Outside, the wind howled against the fortress, but inside, he felt the first stirrings of a truth far heavier than chains. He had been brought here not to vanish, but to be used. Malric could not sleep. The walls of Les Roches Noirs breathed with the groans of chained men and the scrape of rats hunting scraps. He pressed his palm to the cold stone, listening for anything beyond the silence, but only Seraphine's voice cut through. She spoke in fragments, at first names of guards, rumors of wings in the prison no one returned from, the sound of chains that rattled even when no one touched them. Her words were like smoke, thin, drifting, but impossible to ignore. "You think you're here because you sinned," she said one night, her eyes glinting through the bars. "But Valtrin doesn't waste space on guilt. He only brings people the world fears." Malric frowned. "They fear me because they don't know the truth." Seraphine laughed, a bitter sound that echoed against stone. "Truth? In this place, truth is what the sheriff decides. If you're here, you're dangerous to someone, to something." Her voice softened. "And if you don't learn why, you'll be dead before winter." Malric tried to push her away, but her words stuck like burrs. Dangerous? He was guilty, yes, but not like the monsters he heard wailing in the dark. Why had Valtrin spared him? What value could a half-broken outlaw hold in this fortress of demons? That question gnawed at him more than hunger. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the boys glare from Cendrevale and wondered if he belonged here after all. Days bled into each other. Guards dragged prisoners from cells without warning, some for work, some for punishment, some never seen again. Each time, Seraphine muttered under her breath, as if counting, as if measuring the rhythm of the prison's hunger. One evening, after the clang of the last door echoed away, she whispered something that froze Malric's blood. "You're not the first Devereux to be brought here." His head snapped up. "What do you mean?" She leaned into the shadows, her lips barely moving. "Your bloodline has ghosts in these walls. If you want to survive, you'll need to know their sins." That night, Malric lay awake, staring at the black ceiling, the name alone burning in his throat. He thought of his father long dead, silent about his past, his eyes heavy with secrets Malric never understood. If Seraphine was right, then perhaps his chains had been forged long before the fire in Centrevale. Perhaps Les Roches Noirs was not just his prison, but his inheritance. The next dawn, chains rattled outside his cell. Sheriff Valtrin himself stood at the bars, eyes pale as frost beneath the brim of his hat. "On your feet, Devereux." His voice held no anger, no pity, only command. Malric hesitated, then rose, his muscles aching. Guards unlocked the door, their rifles aimed steady. They marched him through a maze of corridors until the air grew colder, sharper, like the breath of a mountain storm. They entered a chamber carved deep into the rock. A single lantern flickered, casting shadows that looked like gallows. Valtrin sat at a rough-hewn table, gesturing for Malric to sit across from him. For a moment, silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of the lantern. Then the sheriff spoke. "Do you know why you're here?" Malric's jaw tightened. "Because the town wanted me dead, and you couldn't be bothered to finish the job." Valtrin's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Wrong. You're here because you're useful." The word struck harder than any chain. Malric leaned forward, anger rising. "Useful? To you?" Valtrin didn't flinch. "To the prison. To me. To something bigger than your sins." He tapped the table with a gloved finger. "This fortress isn't just walls and iron. It's a sieve. The world's filth gathers here, and only those strong enough to endure shape what escapes." His eyes narrowed. "You've seen what hatred looks like, Devereux. I need men who understand it, not fools blinded by it." Malric spat on the floor. "I'm no man's pawn." Valtrin's voice sharpened, cold as steel. "You already are. Every breath you take in here is mine to give or take." The sheriff leaned back, folding his arms. "But I'm offering you a choice. Serve the prison watch, listen, root out the ones who plot against its order, or rot in your cell until the walls themselves swallow you." Malric's fists clenched. The thought of being Valtrin's tool boiled his blood, yet something inside whispered that refusing meant more than death. It meant disappearing, nameless, forgotten, swallowed like all the ghosts Seraphine had spoken of. He thought of the boy in Centrevale, of his eyes blazing with grief. If Malric died unseen in these walls, the boy's hatred would never have an end. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a voice low and rough, he muttered, "What's the price?" Valtrin's smile was a shadow. "The price is simple, Devereux. You'll give me loyalty. And in return, I'll give you a chance to face your ghosts." 2 nights later, Malric's cell door screeched open. Guards shoved a bundle into his arms. A threadbare coat, torn boots, and a knife too dull to kill a man clean. Sheriff Valtrin stood behind them, his face unreadable. "Tonight," he said, "you prove your worth." Malric followed, chains removed but the weight of them still pressing his skin. The corridors twisted down into darkness until the air smelled of mildew and blood. They stopped before a cell unlike the others. Its bars were thicker, its lock heavier, and inside crouched a figure with eyes burning like coals. The prisoner rose slowly, his back bent from years of chains. His name was whispered like a curse to Clement Varru, a killer who had strangled entire families on the frontier. Valtrin turned to Malric. "He's been stirring trouble, riling men. Tonight you silence him." Malric's stomach nodded. "You want me to murder him?" The sheriff's answer was sharp. "I want you to survive him." The guards threw the door wide and shoved Malric inside. The clang echoed like thunder. Varrua's smile split the dark. "So the sheriff sends lambs now." He lunged, chain whipping, knife flashing. Malric dodged, the dull blade trembling in his grip. The cell became a storm of fists, steel, and blood. Every breath was fire in his lungs, every strike a reminder that he was fighting not just Varru, but the weight of everything that had brought him here. At last, Malric slammed the butt of the knife into Varrua's temple. The giant crumpled, blood pooling across the stone. Malric staggered back, chest heaving, hands slick. The door burst open and guards dragged Varrua's limp body away. Valtrin's eyes met Malric's. "Good. You're not dead." He leaned closer, his words a whisper of smoke. "Remember that boy in the crowd, Devereux? Every man you face here carries the same hate in his blood. Kill it or it will kill you." Malric collapsed back in his cell, body shaking. Across the hall, Seraphine studied him in silence before finally speaking. "You think this was about Varru? No. Valtrin is shaping you. He wants a blade, not a man. And if you let him, you'll become sharper than you can bear." Malric buried his head in his hands. The boy's face haunted him. Was this survival or surrender? Days passed, but I did not. Every sound became a weapon in Malric's dreams. The rattle of chains, the crack of bone, the hiss of Voltron's whisper. Yet in the quiet moments, Seraphine's voice anchored him. She spoke of things no one else dared, of wings of the prison closed off for decades, of prisoners vanishing without a scream, of tunnels carved deep into the mountain where torches never reached. Her knowledge was too sharp to be a rumor. Malric finally asked, "How do you know all this?" She leaned into the bars, her eyes gleaming. "Because I've been here longer than most. And because I wasn't always a prisoner." The words froze him. "What are you saying?" Seraphine's lips curled, bitter. "Once I wore the badge. Not like Voltron's, but close. I hunted men for him, brought them to these walls. Until the day he turned on me." Malric's breath caught. "Why?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "Because I saw too much. Because I learned prison doesn't just keep evil, it breeds it." Her confession cracked something in him. "Why tell me?" She held his eyes, unflinching. "Because I see the same chain around your neck. Voltron isn't saving you. He's binding you the way he bound me. You're not the first he's tried to forge." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But you might be the last if you don't break free." Malric gripped the bars, fury and fear colliding inside him. "Break free? This fortress is unbreakable." Seraphine's smile was thin, almost cruel. "Every fortress has a weakness. Even the highest prison in the world." She leaned back into shadow, her voice barely audible. "And I know where it bleeds." The word struck him harder than Verua's fists. For the first time, the thought of escape was not madness but possibility. Yet it came tangled with dread. If Seraphine truly knew the cracks in Les Roches Noirs, why was she still here? What price had she paid for her secret? As silence settled, Malric realized the prison walls were no longer just closing in. They were listening. A week after the fight with Varu, Malric was summoned again. Guards shackled his wrists and marched him down a corridor he had never seen before. The air grew colder, damp with the smell of stone that hadn't tasted sunlight in decades. The torches here burned blue, not orange, and their glow made the shadows stretch like twisted limbs. At the end stood a door carved with strange symbols, older than the prison itself. Sheriff Voltron unlocked it with a key that seemed more bone than metal. Inside, Malric's breath caught. Rows of cells stretched endlessly, yet each held only silence. No groans, no chains, only emptiness. Dust lay thick, but the air felt alive, charged like a storm before lightning. Voltron walked slowly, his boots echoing in the vast hollow. "This is the first wing," he said softly. "The beginning of Les Roches Noirs. Built not to hold men, but to bury names." Malric frowned. "Names?" Voltron turned, eyes piercing. "Every man who enters this wing ceases to exist. No record, no grave, no memory. Just absence." The sheriff stopped at one cell, untouched by dust. The bars gleamed black, wet as if breathing. "Your father," Voltron said suddenly, "once stood where you do." Malric's chest clenched. "You lie." But Voltron's face was stone. "Emile Devereux. He was brought here 20 years ago. He carried blood the world couldn't wash away. Just like you." The words cracked like a whip. Malric stumbled back, fury surging. His father had died when he was young, or so he was told. Had his entire life been a lie stitched together to hide this truth? Voltron stepped closer, voice low. "You want to understand your fate? You want to face the boy who hates you? Then you'll dig deeper into your bloodline, into the rot that seeded this place. And you'll do it for me." His hand rested on Malric's shoulder, heavy as chains. "Because if you don't, you'll vanish into these cells as your father did. Forgotten, nameless. And that boy will never know whether you deserved it." That night, back in his cell, Malric sat against the wall, mind ablaze. Is his father alive once in these walls? Had alone, the name he whispered, been tied to his father's sins? Across the hall, Seraphine's voice cut through his storm. "He showed you the old wing, didn't he?" Malric's eyes snapped to hers. She nodded, grim. "That's where the truth is buried. And Voltron just dug up your grave." Malric could not breathe. Every memory of his father returned, not as a man of wisdom, but of silence. Nights where Emile Devereux would sit by the fire, staring into flames, lips pressed tight, as if guarding secrets too poisonous to speak. Malric remembered asking once as a boy, "Why do people look at us strange?" His father's answer had been a single word: history. Now, in Les Roches Noirs, the word gnawed at him like rust. Seraphine leaned forward, her voice low, urgent. "Your father was no simple man. He was Voltron's first pawn. The sheriff used him to build this fortress into what it is now. But Emil broke. He tried to resist, tried to escape. That's why they erased him. That's why you never knew the truth. Malric's throat tightened. You're saying my father wasn't just a prisoner, he was part of this? Seraphine's eyes burned. Worse, he helped make it. The weight of it crushed him. All his life he had blamed himself for the boy's hatred, for Mathis's death in Centrevale, for the sins of the Crow Blades. Now he saw a chain stretching back generations. His own father had walked these same halls, worn these same shackles, whispered the same name. Alone. Malric finally spoke it aloud, voice shaking. Who was she? Seraphine's expression flickered with pain, then pity. Alone was your father's daughter. Your sister. She died in this fortress. The world tilted. His hands clawed at the bars, desperate. No. You're lying. Seraphine's voice cracked, heavy with her own scars. I wish I was. She was young, barely 16. Valtrin claimed she carried the same blood curse. He brought her here to break her. But she didn't break. She burned. And she paid the price. Malric pressed his forehead against the iron, his breath ragged. His sister lost in these walls, erased like Emil. The name he had whispered was not just a wound, it was a ghost crying from the stones themselves. For the first time since his capture, Malric's rage drowned his fear. If that's true, he hissed, then I will tear this prison apart stone by stone. Seraphine's eyes narrowed, fierce. Then we'll need to bleed it where it hurts most. The silence that followed was alive with promise. Malric no longer felt like a pawn. He felt like a fuse waiting for the flame. Malric paced the length of his cell, each step scraping against stone like a countdown. The truth of Alone gnawed at him, her name no longer just a whisper but a flame. His sister had died here, her blood absorbed by these walls. Now, every groan of iron and every gust of cold wind felt like her voice urging him onward. Across the hall, Seraphine watched him, her expression unreadable. At last she said, if you mean to fight this place, you'll need more than rage. You'll need allies. Malric scoffed. Every soul here wants me dead. But Seraphine shook her head. Not all. Some want freedom more than blood. Find them. That night, she whispered names. Marceau, a gaunt man who once rode with revolutionaries before betrayal chained him. Giraud, a mute giant who could bend iron with his hands. Isolde, a seamstress turned smuggler, known for slipping knives into bread loaves. They're scattered, Seraphine murmured, but they watch. If you can show them you're not Valtrin's dog, they'll listen. The next day Malric's chance came. During the labor detail, he was chained beside Marceau, breaking stones under the sunless sky. Guards jeered, swinging whips. When one struck Marceau across the back, Malric moved without thought, blocking the second lash with his own chains. Blood burned his wrists, but he held firm. Marceau's eyes flicked to him, sharp with both suspicion and respect. A seed had been planted. Back in the cells, Seraphine's lips curved faintly. Good. Now water it. But her tone hardened. Remember, trust too easily and you'll be betrayed. This prison feeds on betrayal. Malric clenched his fists. He had known betrayal all his life, from Armand Lestrel, from silence, from the lies of his father. If he was to trust again, it would be forged in fire. That night, whispers passed through the corridors. The prison had a pulse, and for the first time, Malric felt it beating with his own. Days later, Malric was dragged once more before Sheriff Valtrin. The sheriff's office overlooked the abyss beyond the cliffs, the wind howling through cracks like a choir of ghosts. Valtrin stood with his back to Malric, gazing into the endless dark. You've been busy, he said calmly. Malric stiffened. Breaking stones? Valtrin's chuckle was low. Winning eyes. Whispering hope. Don't think I don't see it. Malric's jaw tightened. Maybe hope's all that keeps a man alive here. Valtrin turned, his gaze sharp as a hawk's. Hope is a leash. And I hold it. He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the floorboards. Do you think you're the first to dream of escape? Your father dreamed the same. So did your sister. Both were swallowed. And if you continue, so will you. The words cut deep, but Malric refused to bow. You erased them. But their names live in me. That's one chain you can't hold. For the first time, a flicker of something crossed Valtrin's face, not fear, but interest, like a smith watching a blade take shape. Then I'll sharpen you further, he murmured. He signaled to the guards. Take him to the pit. The pit had no cell. It was a cavern carved beneath the prison, where the floor sloped into darkness. Prisoners were thrown there not to be caged, but to be broken. Malric stumbled as the stench hit him, sweat, blood, despair. Shadows moved, groaning figures barely human, their eyes hollow. Into this abyss he was cast, chains rattling, the door slamming above. For hours, maybe days, he fought to keep his mind intact. Hunger clawed at him, thirst burned his throat, whispers crawled through the dark. "Join us," they hissed, voices of men long dead. "Fall." Yet amid the madness, one sound anchored him. Elone's name echoing inside, a tether against the dark. When guards finally hauled him out, battered but breathing, Voltron's eyes widened. He expected a man to be broken. Instead, Malric met his gaze with fire. Voltron smirked. "Good. You'll serve." But Malric, bloodied and bruised, whispered under his breath, "Not you. Not ever." The pit changed Malric. Word of his survival spread faster than fire in dry grass. Men who once spat at him now studied him with cautious awe. In the mess hall, Marceau leaned close, his voice a whisper under the clang of tin bowls. "You faced the pit and returned. That makes you dangerous. Dangerous men can lead." Malric frowned. "Lead what? To death." Marceau's grin was thin. "Better to die free than rot in chains." That night, Seraphine approached him, her face pale under the moonlight slanting through the bars. "Marceau trusts you now," she said. "So do others. Giraud waits for your word. Isolde watches the guards more than the stars." Malric rubbed his wrists, raw from the shackles. "Hope is one thing. Escape is another." Seraphine's eyes hardened. "Then make it real." "There's a way, but it's bloody." She revealed it slowly, piece by piece. The delivery carts that brought supplies from the mainland, hauled up by chains thicker than a man's thigh. The moments when watchtowers were blind in the shifting fog. The hidden tunnel beneath the laundry, carved long ago by a prisoner who vanished before finishing it. "You'll need all three," Seraphine warned. "And betrayal will come before the end. It always does." Malric swallowed hard. He saw Elone's face in his mind, her laughter now a ghost. He couldn't fail again. Not this time. "Then we move when the fog comes," he said. "And if betrayal waits, let it come. I'll be ready." Whispers carried through the prison that night, not of chains but of freedom. For the first time in years, the walls seemed to tremble not with fear but with possibility. The fog came 3 nights later, thick as wool, crawling over the cliffs until even the towers seemed swallowed. Malric, Marceau, Isolde, Giraud, and Seraphine moved like shadows, each step rehearsed in silence. They reached the laundry where the earth smelled of soap and damp stone. Isolde knelt, prying at a hidden slab with a shard of iron. Slowly the ground gave way, revealing the mouth of the tunnel. Freedom seemed just an arm's reach away. But as they slipped inside, a sound froze their boots. The door crashed open and torches spilled light into the room. Sheriff Voltron's voice cut the air like a blade. "Did you think I wouldn't smell it?" Betrayal reeked stronger than sweat. Guards surged forward, chains rattling. In the chaos, Giraud swung his massive fists, breaking skulls like pottery. Isolde slashed with her hidden blade, steel flashing. Marceau cursed, shoving Malric deeper into the tunnel. "Go!" Malric turned, but something stopped him. Seraphine stood frozen, her eyes wet. Voltron's smirk was carved in stone as he said, "My daughter always dreamed of freedom. Pity she inherited her mother's weakness." Malric's chest hollowed out. Seraphine Voltron's blood? The truth landed like a hammer. Her silence, her secrets, the guarded glances, it all made sense. She had led them here. "Seraphine?" Malric's voice cracked. She looked away, whispering, "I wanted to believe, but he's always watching." Voltron barked a laugh. "And she told me everything." Malric's fist shook. Betrayal had come, just as Seraphine warned, and it cut deeper than chains. The guards closed in, blades flashing in the fog. Freedom slipped further away, but Malric's fury had never burned brighter. If this was the end, it would be written in fire and blood. The laundry room became a battlefield. Fog poured in through the shattered windows, curling around torches until flame looked like it floated in the air. Giraud roared, swinging chains as weapons, scattering guards like straw dolls. Isolde slashed and spun, her blade biting deep, every strike fueled by years of silence and rage. Marceau pressed his back to Malric's, his voice ragged. "We either break them now or we never breathe free again." Sheriff Voltron stood above it all, calm amid the storm, his coat unmoving as if even the fog dared not touch him. His eyes fixed on Malric. "You carry their hopes on your shoulders," he called, "but shoulders break. So did your fathers. So did your sisters. You are nothing but a repeat." His words stabbed, but Malric felt Elone's spirit rise within him, louder than any taunt. For the first time, he didn't shrink from the sheriff's shadow. He stood taller. Malric lunged forward, seizing a fallen guard's spear. Steel clashed against Voltron's pistol, sparks bursting in the dim light. Each strike rang like thunder, echoing off stone. Voltron's movements were sharp, precise. Every swing of his blade meant to end a life. Malric fought back with desperation, each breath carrying the weight of Alone's memory, each swing fueled by the prisoner's cries. All around, chaos reigned. Guards fell, prisoners surged, chains clattered like drums of war. The tunnel gaped open behind them, a mouth calling for escape, but no one could leave until the sheriff was down. Marceau's shout rose above the clash. "End him, Malric! End him, or none of us leave!" Voltron struck hard, his blade grazing Malric's ribs, blood soaking his shirt. Pain flared, but Malric didn't falter. Instead, he drove forward, ramming the spear's shaft into Voltron's chest, forcing him back against the wall. Dust rained from the ceiling. For the first time, the sheriff's mask of control cracked, his eyes widening not with fear but with fury. With a guttural roar, Malric tore the blade from Voltron's grip and raised the spear high. Every prisoner froze, breaths held, eyes locked on him. This was more than a fight, it was judgment. With one final thrust, Malric drove the spear clean through the sheriff's chest, pinning him to the stone wall. Silence fell. Even the fog seemed to pause. Voltron gasped once, his lips curling into the faintest smile, as if mocking Malric even in death. Then his head fell forward lifeless. The room erupted not in chaos but in release. Chains clattered to the ground, prisoners shouting, crying, clutching one another. For the first time in years, hope wasn't just whispered. It screamed. Malric stood amid it all, bloodied, trembling, his chest heaving. He had struck the blow his father could not, avenged the sister who had died unseen. But freedom was not yet theirs. The prison still loomed, walls high, gates locked, guards scattered in the fog. Marceau clapped a hand to Malric's shoulder. "We've lit the fire," he said hoarsely. "Now we burn the rest." Malric looked at the tunnel yawning before them, then at the prisoners gathering weapons from fallen guards. His voice was steady, stronger than it had ever been. "Then we move. Tonight this prison falls." The highest prison in the world had never seen rebellion. But tonight, with fire, fog, and fury, it would. The prison shook with the sound of rebellion. Chains swung like banners, torches blazed in the fog, and the walls that once felt eternal now trembled under the roar of men and women tasting hope for the first time in years. Malric led them through the tunnel, blood soaking his side, every step carved from pain and will. Behind him, Marceau, Isolde, and Giraud pushed forward, urging prisoners through the narrow passage. "Faster!" Marceau barked. "Before the reinforcements rise." At the tunnel's end, the earth gave way to a ledge overlooking the abyss. The supply chains hung their iron ropes stretching into the fog, connected to pulleys that creaked under their own weight. Freedom was across that void. The prisoners hesitated, fear gnawing at courage. Malric raised his voice, hoarse but steady. "If you fear falling, remember we've been falling all our lives. Tonight we rise." With that, he seized the chain, blood dripping from his palms, and swung across. Gasps filled the air, then cheers as one by one, prisoners followed, their courage breaking like floodwaters. But as they fled, a figure stepped from the shadows, Seraphine. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with red. She did not carry chains or torches. Only silence. Malric froze. "Why?" he asked, voice raw. She trembled. "Because I wanted you to succeed, but I could not betray him. He is my father." The prisoners snarled, blades flashing, but Malric lifted a hand. He looked at her, truly saw the war within her, the child torn between blood and freedom. "Then choose," he said softly. "Stay with his ghost or walk into the dawn." Her lips parted, but no words came. At last, tears slipped down her cheeks. She turned away, retreating into the fog, swallowed by the prison she could never leave behind. Malric's chest tightened, but he did not call after her. Some chains could not be broken. At last, the survivors reached the far side of the abyss. The first rays of dawn pierced the fog, painting the cliffs gold. The world stretched before them, vast and untamed, the west rolling wide with promise and peril. Marceau dropped to his knees, laughing like a man reborn. Isolde stared at the horizon, whispering names of those who had not made it. Giraud raised his massive fists to the sky, silent tears carving rivers through the grime. Malric stood apart, the wind whipping through his hair. He thought of his father's silence, his sister's death, the sheriff's shadow, and Seraphine's broken choice. The weight of it all pressed heavy, but for the first time he felt strong enough to bear it. The highest prison in the world had fallen, not to walls breached or gates shattered, but to hearts refusing to bow. He lifted his gaze to the rising sun, whispering Alone's name one last time. The wind carried it away, scattering it across the wide, open land. And with it, Malric stepped forward into freedom.